Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Rivilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Rivilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. Today's guest is an internationally recognized business and leadership development advisor, author, award-winning speaker, and workshop facilitator, president of Helbig Enterprises. She helps her clients operate more constructively and profitably. In her book, Succeed Without Selling, she offers a straightforward, common sense, and clear guide to the sales process, providing insights around mindset, process, and practices. Through her podcast, Accelerate Your Business Growth, she brings valuable, actionable information to her listeners. Her book, Expert Insights, includes details of 10 of the most listened to episodes of her show. With expertise in small business, sales, social media, networking, and leadership, it is an absolute treat and privilege to have her on Tailoring Talk to level you all up. Tailoring Talkers, please welcome Diane Helbig to the Tailoring Talk Show. Diane, how are you?
I am well, thank you. So thrilled to be here with you.
That intro wasn't long enough.
Yes, it was. It was way long.
So talented. I didn't even fit. I think I only got to about 50% maybe.
Oh, that's so funny. No, I think you pretty much got the gist of it.
So we have another Tailoring Talk first because you're my first guest from Cleveland, Ohio.
Excellent. Glad to be.
In the grand old US of A.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for joining me. So how are things in Ohio at the moment?
Things are good here. We're having the air show this weekend, so because it's Labor Day weekend here in the States. So weather's great. Everybody's doing well, thank goodness. Yep. And yeah, it's good.
Awesome. So hopefully it should be a great weekend.
Yeah.
For you all out there, as my friends say, from that side of the pond.
Exactly.
So now, Dan, if I can start by taking you back a little bit, because we're probably going to get into talking about sales. I obviously want to talk about your book and your podcast as well. But you've been selling or running some sort of business or side hustle ever since you were a little girl. Is that right?
You could say that.
I'm talking about your lemonade stand.
I know, right?
So
Exactly
was there an influence above you? Because like for me, I've grown up in family businesses because when my grandfather came to the UK from India, he brought like a couple businesses over with him and started a couple more when he was here. Mm. So my parents, rather than sending me to nursery, they just took me to work with them. So I've been in a kind of entrepreneurial business kind of environment since I can remember. Yeah. Was it similar for you, or did influences come from somewhere else?
It wasn't similar for me. My father, well, potentially. My father was a manufacturer's rep, so he sort of worked for himself, but, was representing furniture manufacturers, and he was a salesman. So that had a huge influence on my whole viewpoint about selling. But I didn't have anyone my grandfather owned a business, but I wasn't close to that. So I didn't necessarily see how that was going. And that really didn't have any sort of influence on me.
Yeah. And how old were you when you started? I guess can we call it a first business? Your lemonade stand? I guess we can, right? Because you were providing a service, right? And you were making money.
Yeah. So I was in 4th grade. So 8, 9.
Yeah. Thanks for translating that for me because I'm not sure what 4th grade is. We're having this conversation the other day, my wife and I, because she's from Spain originally, and we watch a lot of US TV, obviously. But particularly shows like Never Have I Ever, which generally centers around teens, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking about 12th grade and, going to college. College for us over here is pre-university, whereas college for you guys is actual university.
Oh.
So it all can get very confusing.
Yeah, boy, no kidding.
Yeah.
Right. I guess that would be our high school, right?
Yes. Yeah, we call it college.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I used to have this all the time because I used to work for an American company, and all my American friends and colleagues would be like, "Oh, so where did you go to college?" And I'd be like, "Well, I did 2 years at," and they're like, "You only did 2 years at college? That's really, really crazy." And then you kind of work out that, obviously, as someone said once, two great nations separated by a common language,
Yeah.
or something to that
It is
effect.
amazing. I know that is amazing that even though, right, we're sort of the same, we communicate very differently.
Extremely, yeah, exactly. I love
Yeah.
it though. I have to flip-flop between different because I still have a lot of clients who are in the States, and so I have to alternate between terms like pants and trousers quite a lot. And they'll say to me, I want to get cuffs this time on this suit. And then they'll be like, I'm so sorry, you don't know what that means. And I'm like, no, I know cuffs is turn-ups. I've got it. Don't worry.
Turn
All's good.
ups.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Boy,
That's what
I'm
we call
learning
them.
so much.
English is generally quite a literal language. Like,
Yeah.
we don't tend to have sort of terms that leave too much to the imagination. So
I
if
know,
you
but I'm wondering how that changed. I've always wondered that, how that changed over here, because
yeah,
you would think the same language, all the same words would just come
sort
here
of
and we would
translate
use
to the
them.
same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But then I guess it's like you take Spanish and Latin American Spanish, and there are differences between the
Uh-huh.
two. So
Yeah.
I think it's the other way around. With Latin American Spanish, they tend to be a little bit more literal because they'll say things like auto for car, whereas in Spain it's coche. But auto kind of makes more sense because it's auto car.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
if
Right.
my wife
Right.
overhears me, she'll come running in and she'll hit me across the back of the head. Anyway, that's enough about linguistics. We understand each other.
Yes, we do. That's right.
That's the main thing. So we've been through a pandemic, which I'm kind of getting sick of talking about, actually. But it's happened, so we can't avoid it. And that's kind of changed the landscape in so many different ways. So many aspects of our lives have changed. Selling is something that, for me, is part of the fiber of our existence because we do it all the time, whether we're salespeople or not in the
Right.
traditional sense, right? We're all selling all the time.
That's right.
Um, how have you seen that's kind of landscape of sales in the traditional sense change over the last few years, and how has it impacted the work that you're now doing with your customers?
So one of the things that has really changed is that people are so much more comfortable with virtual selling. So before they just could not wrap their heads around it because, we didn't really have to, but that was also very limiting. So one of the silver linings that came out of the pandemic, in my opinion, is that people could expand their client base and their reach because they realized they could be having these sorts of conversations. So it was still personal, it was still human to human, but they didn't have to be in the same geography. So that's been very interesting. And then, like with the work that I do with my clients, it's really a matter of, okay, how do you navigate that? What does that really look like? Because I don't want them going into sales mode just because it's virtual, right?
Mm.
All the same rules apply. The method is a little different, but the rules are the same, in my opinion.
When I have conversations with my clients, some of them, it depends on what they do as well, because some of them have been able to transition to virtual very, very easily. So when you look at, so again, I'm going to use interchangeable terms here, but lawyers, stroke attorneys, for example, accountants, they've all been able to work consistently virtually without any problems, really.
Right.
But then you get other people in other industries like hospitality, like realtors or estate agents, as we call them here, who are selling a physical product that people really do want to go and touch and see and feel.
Right.
Take even me as an example. And they found that switch to virtual a lot harder. And then their kind of view is that, virtual isn't the same because you cannot build the same relationships that you would build if you were actually in the room with someone face to face, because you don't get a lot of the visual cues that you get when you're in person with someone that you might get when you're online. How do you react when you hear arguments like that?
I don't necessarily agree with them. I think as long as you can do video, and we should all be doing video, I can tell you from personal experience, I have built some of the best relationships, best business relationships over the past 2.5 years that I have had in my entire career. And it's because we had a common bond, but it was all virtual, right? I mean, I'm a solopreneur. I work out of my house. So when COVID hit, I was totally isolated. But I was connecting with people all over the world, all over the US on a weekly basis and building some just phenomenal, strong relationships, getting business, giving referrals to people, connecting people to each other. I think we have to be really careful that we don't let our mindset get in the way of how we engage, right? Because we build that up in our head. That's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny enough, actually, just this morning, a prime example, I had someone follow me on Instagram who is from Denmark. And so I'm known for doing a lot of flamboyant linings on the inside of my jackets and things. And so he wants that, but in reverse. He wants flamboyant kind of in your face, in terms of the fabrics, patterns, that sort of stuff. So he was like, could we do this virtually? And I was like, well, I mean, I've got no choice, right? I mean,
Right.
you want me to serve you, and actually, I kind of like the guy. I was like, and I'd love to try and help you. So let's see if we can do this. And he was willing. I think that's
Uh-huh.
also
Right.
half the fight, right? You've both got to
Right.
be kind of willing to kind of
Yes.
do the thing. And he's all booked in for a virtual measuring session. I mean, he's now actually thinking about taking a flight and just hopping over to London for a day for me to measure him up. But it's definitely I agree with you. It's definitely made the world smaller. But you have to be willing to kind of put any kind of previous judgments or preconceptions, misconceptions, we
True.
could even call them, aside, and actually just kind of been open to embracing change. Because at the end of the day, either you get on board and you innovate and you change, or you risk dying, right?
Exactly. And imagine you can be, I mean, what a differentiator. Because so many people are in such crowded fields, if they can master the virtual world, it gives them a leg up because they are able to do something that a lot of their competition can't do. It's great.
Yeah.
Right?
So to give a live example, so our listeners are clear on what you do, can you talk about your kind of business as a solopreneur, and then how you had to use the most popular cliche term at the moment, pivot, when the pandemic hit, and kind of
Sure.
turn things around and sort of give some flavor of how you're running things today?
Sure. I would love to. Thank you for that opportunity. So before March of 2020, I was working with clients all over the place. So some virtually, some in person, where I advise them on whatever's going on in their business that they're struggling with. So it can be sales, it can be systems, employees, doesn't really matter. I was also doing a lot of training, and I had for 2020 contracts for the entire year of trainings, speaking engagements, all of those sorts of things that I was going to be doing in person all over the US. And the second week of March, or at some point during the month of March, those all vanished. And my local clients, if they didn't want to meet virtually, well, they were all sort of in a state of, what the heck is going on here? So a lot of that stopped as well. So there I was thinking, wow, I have no business. That's so interesting. I've been building this thing for, you know, 16 years and bang, zoom, gone. So
Diane, were you by February of 2020, were you looking at your numbers and looking at the year of bookings ahead, thinking this is going to be our best year ever?
yep,
You know how many times I've heard that, not just
I'm
from
sure.
solopreneurs, but from everyone, from solopreneurs to multinationals. Everybody, so many people saying the same
Yeah,
thing. It was almost like we were all brought, this is a big conspiracy, and we were all brought down like multiple,
right,
never mind a peg or two, right? Anyway, I'm
right.
sorry,
No, you
Carrie, because we were
can't.
the
Right.
same. We
Yeah,
were looking at numbers. We are like, this is going to be our best year in
yeah,
10 years of doing, me doing this on my own and 20 years of me being in this business. And then all
right.
of a sudden it was like, gone.
It's seriously remarkable. And did you think to yourself, because I know for me, I was like, wait a minute. I just spent all these years building this thing. You get yourself to a place where you have a good reputation, people know you, right? You're being sought after, and all of a sudden, none of it. It's not that they don't want to, they can't, right? It's just a whole, yeah, it was, yeah, not great.
I liken
So
it to completing the Rubik's Cube finally and having that sense of accomplishment. And then all of a sudden, someone comes along and takes it from you and just smashes it against the wall.
right. And you can't put the pieces back together.
Yeah,
So you have
exactly.
to pivot, start over,
Yeah.
whatever. So I thought to myself, self, what are you going to do about this? You can crawl under the bed, and cry. Or then I realized, and I think because I was hearing it from people, that people didn't really know how to navigate, especially like from a sales standpoint. I would hear people say, I don't feel comfortable reaching out to people. It's just this whole. So I thought, okay, hang on a second. I had these women who I was supposed to be doing a sales symposium with later in the year, and that got canceled. So I reached out to them and I said, what do you think about us putting something together around how do you navigate this thing?
Yeah.
How do and we can offer it to associations whose client base is small businesses because they don't know what to do about their programming either, because their programming used to be in person and now all of a sudden it isn't. So we put the whole thing together, and I reached out to a bunch of associations I know, and we got business out of it. And we didn't charge a lot. And if they couldn't afford it, we didn't charge them anything. But it was an opportunity just to keep the engine going and get back into the groove. And so I took a course on how to teach virtually, how to become a virtual educator. And excuse me, and thank goodness, because then that's what companies decided they wanted to do. They knew they couldn't totally stop. So they had to do something. So once I learned it, then I could do totally virtual. It's not my favorite thing to do because it's harder because of the engagement and the connection. I mean, that is one of the places where you really want to be in the room. But if you don't have a choice, you do it. So I ended up not even having that bad of a year in 2020. It wasn't fabulous, but it could have been a lot worse. 2021 was actually worse than 2020.
Oh, wow. Why?
Yeah. Because people still didn't know what to do.
Right.
So they weren't sure if all of a sudden we were going to be shutting down again. There was so much unknown. The vaccine was coming on board. No one was they were so hesitant to do anything that they weren't even committing to the virtual.
Yeah.
So it was a really strange challenge. That year was more challenging for me, for my business.
Yeah. It's really funny how uncertainty and I can't remember what the other thing was. I do this a lot because my brain is pinging around all the it's like, as I described to one of my recent guests, it's like Disney in my head. The whole thing. Disney, Pixar, you name it, is all going on.
They're all in there.
but it's funny what you say about uncertainty, right? Because like we basically I was saying to a lot of customers, especially my customers in real estate, that it would take time to figure out what this thing meant for all of us, because the uncertainty was over the length of time we were going to be put under restrictions, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well is when the media doesn't really have that much else to grab onto, it really, like at the
Yeah.
moment, it's if it wasn't COVID went, then it's the Ukraine war and all the scare stories out of that. We were all looking at the skies wondering if we were going to be, seeing missiles flying over.
Right.
And then that's kind of died down because now we have a global energy crisis, right? Which is now going to bring, the next Great Depression, if you believe what a lot of media outlets are saying. But then on the ground, you're kind of thinking as you talk to your customers every day, actually, it's not that bad. But the uncertainty thing, sorry, this is what I was trying to go back to. I think for me, because 2020 happened, business collapsed, we got shut down. We then realized, actually, we're in the business of solving people's clothing problems. I don't see anybody walking around naked. So they're not wearing suits. What are they doing? We pivoted. I'm trying to run through this quickly because my listeners have heard it 200 times. So 2020 was about surviving. And then I had some inside track knowledge on the vaccine rollout. So I guess that's where someone like me had the advantage because I had inside know-how of what was happening. I knew when the facilities were being built.
Wow.
I knew what the target dates were to get vaccine into production. I knew what was going on with the trials because I deal with people in all different areas. Right. So I have patent attorneys that deal with biochem. I have, people at IBM and places like that deal with big kind of projects. And all these people, their talents were drawn on by the government, and they were all kind of brought together to build facilities to make vaccines to then distribute, et cetera, et cetera. So, I was able to kind of, when I was talking to customers who were like, I'm not doing anything because I don't know what's happening. I don't know how long this is going to be. I was able to say, listen, I can't give you the full details, but I can tell you with confidence that things are happening. And that we should start to see the first vaccinations going into people's arms in December 20. I think it was 20. It was 2020, wasn't it? Yeah, because it was really, really quick.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of calmed people down.
I'll bet.
It's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah.
So, so we were able to kind of just push on from there. And then get out of this thing and be in a position where, suddenly we are having our best year, which is great. We're kind of back to where we were at the start of 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fabulous.
But it's so great to hear that you've been able to then, I guess, get over the setback of 2021, come into 2022 stronger, and also get over the whole thing of having to do most of what you do virtually. But then I'm guessing because you're coaching, so it doesn't really matter whether people are in the United States or in the UK, in Europe, on the other side of the planet, down in Australia.
Yep.
You can reach them all.
Absolutely. And I was always doing that. So I was used to a virtual environment, but I wasn't used to training on a virtual environment. So that was challenging. I'm still doing it. This is what's great. I'm doing things in person. I'm doing things virtually. This is really one of the benefits that, in my opinion, came out of it is that we have so many more options that if a company can't afford to, bring in a trainer physically, okay, we can figure it out virtually, right? So I can still do the work. Just sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm there. So,
I can tell you probably prefer in person whenever you can, right? Because you're so personable.
I do. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Especially with the training. It is vastly different. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
I prefer seeing people in person. I mean, I've done a lot virtually now, like measurings and fittings and things like that. You can send the clothes out to people and get them back and so on. I'll always find a way to do it, but I prefer to have my hands on them physically and see what's going on and see how they're reacting as well. So I do. It's a lot of big business owners that I deal with have really, really struggled with virtual. I think it depends on the age group as well, because right. Are you finding this? The youngsters are kind of like all about being online because they've probably all grown up with a mobile phone in their hand, not used to actually speaking to people face to face. Whereas us oldies, we're used to
That's
playing in the
right.
park and doing other things, right?
Yeah.
So
But you know
we're
what, one
used
of
to
the
that contact.
challenges is that I'm finding is, and so this is one of the things I'm training on, is this younger generation that's going to end up being the biggest in the workforce fairly soon. They're so comfortable with technology, and they're not so comfortable with conversation, that they're missing opportunities like with customer service and those sorts of things, because sometimes you just have to pick up a phone. You can't be doing this. There's too many, landmines with that. So yeah, it presents an opportunity for me. But a lot of companies I'm getting feedback from are struggling with that because their go-to is texting or email. And it's just not relationship building.
Yeah.
But it's how they grew up.
Yeah. No, exactly. I've suddenly had to, because I'm working with people of all different ages, so I've suddenly had to become proficient, not just at iMessage and WhatsApp. That's fine, I can deal with that. But Instagram, for example, I mean, that people message me on Instagram all the time like it's a text messaging service. And then sometimes they'll email you and they'll be really snooty with you, and they'll be like, I messaged you like 5 days ago and you haven't messaged me back. And I'm like, well, where? Because I haven't seen you on here. Well, I messaged you on Instagram, or I
I know,
sent you
but
a
do you
message.
see that? Yeah, I know. See, I never see my Instagram messages either. It's dangerous.
Yeah,
Especially
extremely.
because I would think with what you do that Instagram would be a great place for you to be engaging with people, right? Because it's so
Yeah,
visual.
it is. That's it. So I'm kind of social media was something that I always struggled with up
Yeah.
until recently, and I think and you probably find this with your clients, and I'm sure you've had to really kind of get roll your sleeves up and kind of get next to them on the whole social media question, because the big
Yeah.
question is, how does a business work out what the hell to do when it comes to social media? Because most people take a, well, I need to be on all of them approach, which isn't always the best thing.
No, it's not. I think it's the wrong concept. And they're told to do that, but you have to be where your audience is and where your audience is going to hear your message, in my opinion. So you have to think about, okay, what is the demographic of my audience? If they're older, they're not on any of that stuff, right? I mean, we went through this weird period where the kids were on Facebook and then they got off Facebook because the moms got on and they were like, okay, that's it. Now I'm going someplace else. It's like done. Okay. So you have to know who's your audience and where do they absorb information, and where are they absorbing your kind of information. Like, I'm on Facebook because I have to understand it, as for my business.
Yeah.
But in order to be able to help my clients, but that's not where my clients are hearing my message, or my prospects are hearing it. They're hearing it on LinkedIn because it's the business platform. So they're not even hearing it on Twitter. So you have to know where are they hearing it, and get away from this idea of, okay, well, everybody's there on Facebook. Okay, maybe, but they're there as moms and dads and grandparents and cousins and friends, and that's their mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So for some people, it's the perfect place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not necessarily thinking about, employee coaching, or
Right.
where they're going to get their workwear and all that kind of stuff on Facebook. But when they're on a different platform, like LinkedIn is the ideal one, because that is where they are thinking about kind of coaching and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, so something you touched on there, which was knowing your customers or knowing where they hang out. But then if we take that a step back, we need to know our customers, right?
Yeah.
How do you start that process? Because you get so much different advice from people, and some people will say, well, kind of close your eyes for a second with a blank sheet of paper and imagine what your ideal customer looks like. But not all businesses are at the stage where they can pick and choose who their ideal audience is. They're at that stage where they're just trying to get things off the ground and survive, to be able, if you take the nature example, because it just sprang into my Disney brain, where you've got a Bambi or a fledgling chick, right? Which before it does anything, it needs to learn to fly and it needs to learn how to hunt.
Right.
And it's pretty much just going to flap its wings and hope it catches some air, and it's pretty much going to hunt anything that it can get its beak on.
Yep.
until eventually it becomes proficient enough to then be selective about what it wants to eat or where it wants to fly to.
Right.
Are you with me so far?
I'm with you, oddly enough.
Oh God, just wait till I start releasing these things on YouTube. Let me know.
I can't wait.
So right, so like now I'm in the position after 12 to 20 years of really being able to kind of decide who I want to serve.
Yep.
I don't need to serve everybody, but when you go back to the beginning, anybody who wanted to get clothes made, I didn't care who they were or how much they had to spend or didn't have to spend. I would just go serve him and worry about it later.
And yeah.
Sorry, going back to my original question, it's how is there a system that you use for helping people to kind of, work out where they should be targeting?
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that age of business also can influence that as well.
It can. I guess my viewpoint is there's prospecting, which is an activity, and then there's what comes to you and what can come to you like through marketing, right? So whatever you're doing with social media, then that can bring people to you. I feel really strongly that we should always be prospecting toward what we want, but we can talk to anyone who reaches out. Okay.
Yeah.
I caution people no matter what stage of business they're in, and I totally get the I need revenue, mindset, but I do caution people to be really careful with that, because if you take on anybody and they are terrible customers, you are going to get in your own way of being able to get the good ones. And they're going to drag you down and make you miserable, and you're not going to make a profit. So this is this weird thing we have in our head. I need revenue. Yeah, you do. But what you really need is profit. And the most profitable customers are the ones who check all the boxes. There's all these things about them that fits that ideal client, avatar, whatever you want to call it. But so what I say to people is, if you are brand new, you believe you have a target market, go look at them. And you can do some market research, reach out, ask questions to people, what would you want in this situation? So you can get a feel for where people are. Once you've been in for a couple of years, I like to do the 20-20, 20 up, 20 down. So 20 up is, think about your top 20% of customers ever, the ones you adore. There's something about them and there's something consistent about them. There's probably a couple of things about them that put them in that category. And then do the same thing with the bottom 20%, the ones you hate or you hated and you couldn't stand them and you didn't want to answer the phone when they called and you just were trying to figure out how to get them to leave you alone. There's something about those people, those customers, that is similar. When we can identify those things, it helps us then when we're prospecting or when people reach out to us to navigate. And I'm a firm believer that we need to be asking a ton of questions before we ever determine whether it's a good fit. So, but those being able to do that identification gives you the opportunity to figure out what questions you need to ask and how you need to ask them, so that you can learn some of those character traits of people to see, is this person going to be awful to work with? And if they are, as hard as it is to walk away from money, walk away, because it's not going to help your business. I know it feels like it is, but it's not. In the long run, it's not. It's going to keep you from growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you're long in the game, like we are, then it's your instincts that you can rely on.
Yeah, because I mean, right? Don't you think you can sort of tell the minute you start talking to somebody whether?
Yeah. And even today, I'm not perfect, right? It's like, I know, like my instincts, my spider sense is going off, and I was just like, please do not work with this person. And then you start, and then you realize, and he's like, I should have just listened to myself in the first place. And you're like, okay, look, I'm just going to serve him this one time, and it's done. And then, that's it. I'll recommend someone else for them to work with instead.
Right.
I always try and do that. I try not to just cut people off. I always try and, still stay friends, but this isn't we're not actually a great fit.
Right. I'm not the best resource for you. Right.
Exactly.
This is like my favorite. It's me, not you. I'm not the best resource for you. Let's get you with, the person who's going to be able to serve you best.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard, I think, for a generation that's kind of grown up in that kind of, influenced by Glengarry Glen Ross. I mean, I went to American sales school because I worked for an American company originally. So, but then I've done a lot of reading on both sides of the pond, but the theory was always the same through the 90s and the early 2000s. It was that whole always be closing kind of thing.
Yes.
Brass balls, coffees for closers, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's obviously so different nowadays. I think if you try to sell in that way, some of the principles still hold true. But I think generally, if you took that approach,
right, it
would be very, very difficult.
Yes. And yet there are still people trying to do it that way. It's very interesting. And not getting the results they want and not figuring out they're blaming the prospect instead of saying, maybe I'm doing something that's really not quite connecting with people. Yeah. So I say, and in my book, I have a whole chapter about always be closing has changed, right? In my opinion, it's always be curious. Because when you're always in that closing mindset, that means you're always in sales mindset. And everyone you see, it's like fishing for dinner, right? Is this one dinner? Is this one dinner? And you're missing out on really incredible relationships you could be building with people who will be good referral sources, who will be good colleagues and associates and resources that you can offer to other people. And you miss all of those connections because you're so busy looking for your next meal. Yeah. And it's so off-putting.
Yeah. It's tiring as well.
Yeah.
I mean, not just for the people that you're targeting, but for the salesperson as well, it's tiring.
Yeah. Because it's not natural.
No.
That's the other thing. And so many small business owners really struggle with this idea of having to be salespeople. But if you think about it, they don't want to do it because it's unnatural, because it doesn't feel good, because it has all of that stuff attached to it. So what I always say is, every time someone says to me, I hate sales, it's like, great, right on, stop. Just, let's not. Just go meet people and get to know them and learn about them, So, and even if we go back to the brand new business, same thing. Figure out what your target market is, and then do your research on every single entity within that target market. Because the more you know about them, you'll start sifting through. But then the ones who you feel like, okay, these are ones that I potentially, could have a relationship with. When you're doing your research, now you have something to talk to them about that's about them. So you have that starter conversation, that connection. And just remember, you're not trying to sell them anything. You want a conversation. That's it. So then you can see how that conversation goes. I think when we do that, then, we're our natural selves. We're not feeling all that pressure of I have to be perfect and eloquent and all those other things. And they trust that. So
yeah. People don't like being led to water. They prefer to go take a drink when they want to, right?
So
generally,
true.
It's our natural instinct.
That's right.
But then if I want to go take a drink of water, but I know that I can go get a glass of sales coaching from Diane, and I can go to Prit, who's one of my previous guests, social media marketing, and I can go get that glass of water from there. And then if I want a suit, I can go to myself, obviously. That it's a nicer way just for us to be living our lives, right?
Right.
Which is something I found recently, because I want to ask you about networking and how you've approached that, bearing in mind that so much of your business has had to go virtual. In the real world, thankfully now we've got most of the real world back over here, but networking was something that I never did. So I was the old traditional, if I'm going to prospect, I'll go get a directory, work out who all the guys are at X firm, and then I'm just going to call them all up.
Wow.
And that's how I built my business for years and years, and then gradually referrals came into it and so on. But I never really did networking stuff, just because
I always
got nervous, Diane, about meeting people. Because naturally, I'm not, I keep saying I'm introverted. I don't think I am anymore, because since podcasting, it's really got me out of my shell. It's quite cool. So
Congratulations.
now I love going to these things, and I love meeting new people. But I just,
That's
I made a
interesting.
New Year's resolution this year. I said to myself back in December, I was like, if anyone asked me to go to these networking things, I'm going to say yes. And some of them were duffers, and some of them were amazing. And
Right.
so I just kind of worked that out, and I said, right, I'm not going to go to any of those types of events anymore, but I'm going to go to those.
Exactly.
The one thing I do hate doing is when I go to an event is actually talking about what I do, because I have to do it
Yes.
every single day.
Don't do it.
No. So
So,
if
so
you and I
yeah.
met, I'd be more focused on you. Like, what do
Right.
you do? What do you like
Right.
to do? Never mind what
Yeah.
you do outside of. And then suddenly you're in a conversation with someone, you're getting to know each other on a personal level.
Exactly. Totally. So yeah. So my thing is, I have a feeling that you probably weren't an introvert. I have a feeling you didn't like to go to those things because you felt like you had to put on a suit that didn't fit and you had to behave in a way that was
Oh, sorry.
uncomfortable.
You're using an analogy there.
I know that's your business. I know. So,
I'm thinking all my suits fit me.
I know all my suits fit. Are you kidding? Taylor, for goodness
Diane,
sake.
what is wrong
I
with you?
know,
Do you
right?
know whose podcast you're on?
I used it
No, you're right.
intentionally, right?
You're right. Yeah, you are
Yeah.
right.
This is why people don't like it. But once you figured out, okay, I'm just going to go and just check it out, your whole mindset was different. The way you were approaching it was totally different. So, what I always say to people is, the more you're talking, the less people are listening. So, don't talk about your business and don't ask them about theirs. Like, my favorite thing is, so tell me your story, because then people will tell you about them. They might tell you about their work. They're going to tell you about whatever's top of mind, whatever's really important to them. And great, because now you know what matters to them and what you can talk to them about. And sometimes there's real connection that you never would have known about that ends up being the foundation of building a really good business relationship.
Yeah.
And it might lead to business. Who knows? But it's going to enrich your business one way or another. And I think that's how we have to look at it.
Yeah.
Right. And then don't go to the ones that are duffers, as you say. We don't say that.
What would you say?
I did awful. I don't know.
Awful. Duffers probably wasn't even the right word. It was probably had half my listener base just cringe when I said that, but whatever.
That's okay.
I'm used to embarrassing myself. I don't
care.
But no, you're right. But the question is so powerful. So, like, my favorite question when I meet people in person for the first time is I say to them, "What do you like to do?"
It's great.
Right?
It's great. Yes.
Because then the way they answer that will tell me what their passions are.
That's right.
Because some people will say, well, and they'll talk about what they do in business, but then some people will say, well, I have two kids, and one's 12 and one's 6, and they like to do this, or I like to spend my time doing that.
Yeah.
And then or I like to play golf, I like to whatever. But you just find so much out about someone's priorities.
Yes.
When you ask that question.
Exactly. And I think we have to remember that people buy from the person first, the product or service second, the company third, right? So people do business with people. So we have to be people in order to build those relationships, build that trust, identify who we want to be engaging with. Life is way too short to be engaging with people who don't, bring you joy, who you do not enjoy that experience. So when you approach an event with, I'm just going to check it out, just going to see who's here, just learn something about one or two people, you're so present that you pick up on those cues you were talking about before, right? You pick up on people's cues really quickly, and you can feel that, I feel a resonance with this person, or I feel no resonance with this person. Great. It's like dating.
Yeah. We talk about energy a lot, when you feel good energy with someone, whether it's you and I on the other end of a call recording a podcast episode, or whether it's someone that you meet in person at a networking event, or it's someone that you meet for the first time who's coming in because, they replied to your website and, they're potentially going to be a customer.
Yeah.
I'm getting, as I get older, I think maybe it's an age thing. I don't know, but I'm just so much more sensitive to energy than I've ever been at any other time in my life.
Yeah.
If I'm not kind of quite feeling it with someone, then I'm sort of, politely saying, this isn't going to work out, whatever it is.
Exactly. Right. It's because you can't change that. I think we just have to own and accept there's people you're not going to work with. There's people you're not going to buy from. There's people who aren't going to buy from you. That's life. It's just, this is the way it is. And so and I think COVID did teach a lot of us about priorities and about who we really want to be spending time with, because there was so much loss that I do think that is also one of the silver linings from that people are reevaluating and saying, hang on a second, this doesn't work for me. I will say something about the younger generations that I think they were raised with this. And I think they have absolutely no patience or energy for people who they don't feel a connection to. And they're unapologetic about it. It's an interesting thing to watch because they motor. I have a 23-year-old and a 26-year-old. And so watching how they engage and motor and, they're sort of oddly intolerant of crap, they just, no, not doing it. Thanks anyway. Right. Which is interesting because I'm of a generation where we were sort of taught to give people the benefit of the doubt, give them a second chance and all of that. And most of the times those did not work out that well. So
well, you had that friend that maybe your parents did, or you did, but you had that friend that was kind of always around that your parents would just tolerate, and you were just kind of like, why, like, I don't understand why you're friends with that person in the first place.
Right. You don't like them, it's like it's an obligation. It's some weird, right. It's just not that way anymore with these. Thank goodness, they're intolerant of a lot of things that we should be intolerant of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm highly sensitive to that, which is why I'm, trying my best to keep up with them as well.
Yeah.
Keep up with my daily moisturizing regime so I don't look as old as I am. But that everything that we've talked about in the last 40 minutes or so, what we're coming down to the point is recognizing the fact that we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making selling more a human process.
Yeah. Right.
Rather than this highly kind of systemized. Remember back in the old days, your sales manager, your line boss would sit down with you after the sunning day and say, I've been listening to your calls, and you did this wrong, and you did your introduction, your pitch was wrong, you missed a word here, or this was the time, that was the moment to close them. Why didn't you close? Just like, because I wasn't feeling that they wanted to do anything today. It wasn't quite right. That's why I didn't close, and I just sensed it would be better to, just move this to a different time. The timing's not right for them.
Right.
Trying to force someone to do something against their will. It's, you want everybody going with the flow.
Right.
All this resistance all the time.
Yeah.
Stressful for everybody involved.
And it doesn't lead to repeat business, right? Because they might call and cancel, or they might go ahead with it, but you'll never get them back on the phone. You'll never get another meeting with them because they will figure out how to keep you at a distance. Mm-hmm. So what did you gain? It's like a short-term gain when you're in a long-term environment. So, yeah.
So, which brings me neatly onto your book, Diane.
Yes.
Succeed Without Selling.
Yeah.
The more you think about selling, the less you will sell.
Yes.
When did you write that? And where? And by the way, I promise you, because I haven't read it. Spoiler alert. But
Yes.
It's just downloaded to my Kindle.
Oh, sweet. I can't wait to hear what you think.
I can't wait to get into it.
Excellent.
But having looked at some of the excerpts from it,
Uh-huh.
because you read a lot of sales books, and a lot of them I like to read via Blinkist. I don't know if you've heard of Blinkist. It's an
Uh-huh.
app where they take books, and not just sales books, books of great literature or whatever, but most books you kind of read them, but you probably could have done with reading 80% less of them, right?
Uh-huh.
You
Sure.
have to boil all of that crap out to
Right.
get down to the substance.
Yes.
But the thing that, other than the fact I was interviewing you, but the thing that made me think when I looked at the reviews as well, and I was like, oh, and I looked at the synopsis, and I was like, oh, this looks like something that I could really get my teeth into, because I like to be a student of the author. And it looks like everything in there is really actionable. Was that,
Yes.
I'm guessing that was very, very deliberate on your part, because so many sales books I've got in my library behind me,
Mm-hmm.
I've got different post-it notes on maybe 2 or 3 pages because that's all that's relevant. The rest of it
Yes.
is just author
Yes.
vanity, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I'm a very succinct thinker. So it's hard for me to embellish a lot because I just want to get to the point and teach you what you need to know and move on.
Yeah.
And I wrote it intentionally. I was so frustrated by watching people continue to engage in behaviors that weren't serving them because they were either afraid of the process or they'd been taught something that doesn't work, whatever. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to take everything I know, I'm going to put it in this book, and I'm going to give people the why some things don't work and why other things do work, but also some guidance with try this, try that. I don't believe that that I could give just a blueprint and say, go do this and you'll be successful. I don't believe in that. I think we have to figure out what we're comfortable with, but there are principles that we need to follow, right? So I figured this is my passion project and putting everything in here. So there's a chapter for sales managers to stop behaving the way you were just describing. There's a chapter for direct sellers, the Mary Kay and the, whoever, to help them realize, okay, sales, it's not your friends and family. They are not a target market. Stop, don't go after them. So, because there's B2B, there's B2C, the behaviors are different, the things you can do are different. But I just thought, you know what, if I can put it all in this book with forms that you can download from my website, and just, even if there's one part of it that you struggle with, like networking, and you just go to that chapter and you read it, and then you try some of the ideas in there, great.
Yeah.
Just if it helps people get more comfortable with selling, I'm all about it. Or
Yeah.
not selling, but
It's almost like the sales recipe book, right? Because you buy recipe books, maybe because you like the chef, or because it's a type of cuisine or a country's cuisine that you kind of want to cook more of. But then not all of the recipes in there are going to be relevant to you, because there may be certain ingredients that you either can't get a hold of or you just don't like.
Yes. Right.
So you kind of just go for, so for me, it's, I'm going to be straight into, the networking section of that book, B2C, because B2C is what I do. B2B is not relevant for me anymore.
Right.
Would have been in a past lives. And so on, which, and I think that's such a refreshing way to approach a sales book, because also you're saying, I know that I'm not going to be something for all of you,
right?
But I hope to have something for all of you.
Yeah, I hope there's something in here that you can have an aha and you can say, oh, that's the thing. And I love the recipe book analogy, because some recipes you already have down. You already know, you already have your favorite. You don't need someone else's, right? You've got that. You know how to do that. And then there's ones that you want to try that you've never done before.
Yeah.
So great. Here's some ideas. Check them out. See if they work for you. So yeah, that's a really good. I love that. You might have to steal that.
No, it's all yours.
Thank you.
You'll get a recording of this whole thing. You can use it however you want.
Excellent.
But yeah, if you need any more, just let me know.
I will.
But yeah, honestly, I can't wait to start reading. So yeah, no, thank you. And I will definitely give you feedback.
Thank you.
Well.
I would appreciate that.
And make sure that I have the links to where people can get their hands on it.
Thank you
Very,
for that
very
as
important.
well. Yeah.
So how do you see the next kind of year or two shaping up for you?
Oh, I think I think people have been so hungry for training that it is right back to where it was before March of 2020. It's so interesting. I mean, it's just really exploding. And then I've got some programs that I'm creating for solopreneurs and micro businesses.
Okay.
Who I've noticed are challenged by a couple of things that I want to, focus in on and create a resource for them. So doing a lot of creation. So,
yeah. Awesome. Exciting.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm so grateful that we found each other.
I am too.
And you came on the show today. I wish I had more time with you, and we may have to do this again. Maybe after I've actually read the book.
That would be great. I would love that.
Could we do that?
Yes. Because then I can hear straight from you what you thought and what made sense to you and what didn't make sense. And yeah.
Exactly. But I'll say it again if I didn't already, that what I'm so excited about is, see, I have a blank notepad ready for your book.
Oh my gosh.
To work through alongside it, because that's what it strikes me as being, is that there's actionable things in there that people like me can take and actually use and put into practice.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm
good. That's
can you
great.
See it?
Yes. Yes. It's so great.
Oh wait, oh my god, I'm so excited. Diane, thank you. Right, you lot. Diane's book, Succeed Without Selling. The more you think about selling, the less you will sell, is available from Amazon. Is it available from other bookstores as well?
Oh yeah, wherever books are. So yeah.
So in the States, Barnes and Noble is very famous. Over here, Waterstones and so on and so forth. But I will make sure that link is there. Dan, where else can my listeners find you online, especially if they want to hear more about your coaching programs? So, I mean, I'm all over online, as probably in places I shouldn't be, but going to my website's really probably the best place, helbigenterprises.com, because they can find the podcast, links to all my coaching programs, and they can sign up for a 30-minute complimentary phone consult. I'm happy to talk to anybody. And if I can help you, take action or resolve a situation in 30 minutes, great. There's no obligation attached to it. Just, and if not, then you get a taste of what it would be like to work with me. Yeah. Perfect. And who wouldn't want to work with you, having spent an hour in your company? Thank you. We're so privileged. Same back to you. Thank you, Diane. And thank you all so much for joining Diane and I on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is now on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. And I love feedback, so you can also email the show directly at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people especially this episode, because there's just so much great stuff in there and actionable points that Diane gave. So don't keep it to yourself. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and feel compelled to throw some change our way and support the show, you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Rivilla. Have a great week. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Diane. Thank you. That was fun.